This episode is brought to you by the love of supporting independent film. Daniel here. I'm sure you've all heard people complaining about how they don't make anything original anymore. Just a bunch of sequels, prequels, reboots, remakes. Well, I recently wrote a feature film with my good friend Ian Rayburn called Deathmatch Dad. It's something original. It's a family drama that has ultra-violent deathmatch wrestling in part of it. So if that sounds like something you're interested in and want to see on the big screen, please help us out. We have started an Indiegogo crowdfunding campaign. There are multiple levels of contribution with multiple perks. Please check it out in the episode description. You know, if you're listening on your phone, it's probably there. If you're listening on a website, it's also there. So please click on the link and see how you can help us bring our film to the masses and make sure that we can pay everybody involved properly and pay for the locations that we need. Thank you very much for listening. Enjoy this episode about The Mandalorian.
Ladies and gentlemen, ATDF everything in that shelf presentation. You're now rocking with TDF everything. Spoiled rotten.
Spoiler alert.
Welcome back, everybody.
Hey.
It's me, Daniel.
And ban.
On Spoiled Rotten.
On that shelf.
Boom.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
like
as promised.
a well-oiled machine.
Exactly. And as promised, we're back this week. I meant to be charging my phone. You know what? Last time I forgot my water. This time I forgot my juice.
That's
or
right.
my phone. That's fine. Let's hope this works out.
Yep.
So, as you know, we're not doing the old model. For these weeks, we are just talking The Mandalorian all episode long. This is Chapter 3, The Sin. What did you think?
What an episode.
Yes, I liked
What
it a
an
lot.
action-packed episode. I mean, like, this episode was everything I was hoping for. Because, like, as much as I talked about, I love the RPG element of him upgrading the armor.
But they
and
did do
everything.
that.
They did, but they did it very rapidly this time. Like, you got
For me, I was like,
multiple
oh,
pieces
we're
done.
really doing this. We're really.
Yeah.
I, as someone who actually likes the stuff, I can see why you'd be like, oh, but there needs to be more. But I was just like, wow, we're really digging into this. Like,
Yeah.
she's really talking about all this stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was happy to see that they actually did the RPG stuff because you're like, oh, well, next episode we'll obviously be doing that. And I was like,
Yeah.
I'm glad this is working out.
I
It
love
made sense to me, but I was like, I'm glad they're like legitimately doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And now I find out you feel like there was room for more.
Well, yes, because it's just like, okay, well, obviously with the bounty, he got like a significant amount of Beskar steel and all that kind of stuff. And with that is a fascinating dialogue between the bounty hunters,
Right.
and the remaining of the Mandalorian after the purge. And all that
Before
kind of
we
stuff.
talk
But,
about
yeah,
that,
we'll talk
I just
about
want to
that
say
later.
one thing. No, I'm not saying you're going out of order. I'm saying I missed something that I really wanted to talk about on the first episode.
Oh yeah,
Which was, I really feel like that forger, I fucking hate that sound, sorry. That forger was like, when you first see her, I was like, this is like the first Iron Man. And they even did the 3 hits on the metal.
Yep.
And I was like, this is a Jon Favreau show.
It's
like,
very
it
much a
does
Jon
stand
Favreau
to
thing.
reason that
Yeah.
he would be like, yeah, sure, put that reference in.
Yep.
Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Every time I see her, I'm initially like, like first Iron Man. I get it. But yes, so let's get back to Chapter 3. Basically he delivers the baby first. Right?
yeah. He follows the rules of the guild and everything like that. He delivers Baby Yoda. Obviously, is very conflicted about it. He's the Baby Yoda's grown on him and all that kind of stuff.
Yes. And as we discussed, he is very like, you shouldn't leave kids to themselves.
Yes.
And like, even when he's talking to the forger, he's like, well, whatever is left, please give it to the foundlings. And she's like, yeah, that's how it should be.
And even with the forger, he was saying something like what happened there is like, yeah, but it wasn't an honorable kill, so I don't feel like I deserve the symbol on this.
So that's the thing. Was it the first episode? Yes, I think in the first. Sorry. In the first chapter, she was like, hey, has your signet been revealed yet? And he's like, no. And she's like, all right, well, then I'll make this piece. And then this chapter, she's like, hey, like, where'd you get those marks from? And he was like, the horn bull or whatever the fuck they're calling that monster. And she's like, great, that's your signet. And he's like, well, I can't accept that because, as he said, it was not an honorable kill. My enemy helped. So that's the first thing I want, but we'll finish this thought. So then she's like, okay, great. You don't want a signet? I'll use the leftover stuff for the whistling birds. But that enemy thing I thought was interesting. Like, does he legitimately see
I think
Baby Yoda as an enemy, or is he just like
I don't think he
speaking in metaphors? Like,
I think
not metaphors, but
metaphorically
like
speaking.
not metaphors, because I think the idea is he's trying to mask his feelings for the.
I'm pretty sure that's what I took from it. It was that he was like, I'm conflicted about this. I'm not going to say it was an ally, because if it was an ally, then it's a more complicated discussion,
Yes.
especially with all the other Mandalorians surrounding him at that point. So it was just like, oh, he was an enemy, and then made it look like he was doing slimy things by saying, oh yeah, they didn't know I was an enemy at the time, kind of
Right.
deal, and just kind of like muddied that up, because the whole episode is full of conflict internally for him, and that's a very, very, very visually hard thing to depict, especially when you're
They've got some markers on. So
Yeah.
for me, I just watched it before you came over again, because I didn't want to have a repeat of me being like, I don't know, in chapter 2 he needed to get some stuff from Jawas. I wanted to like remember what happened. So for me, one of many markers of how he's feeling, because as you're saying, you can't really see his face. I thought there was some good stuff he did with breathing that helped. Like, the physicality of his breathing kind of helped you see where he was at. But the big thing is the chapter. The chapter begins with him being like, "That's not a toy," to that knob on his on his thing, and taking it away from Baby Yoda, showing that he's kind of like, well, these are the rules, and I'm not going to let this kid stop, like, throw me off of sticking to what should be. This is the way it is, or whatever they say. So then, obviously, at the end, when he unscrews it and gives it to Baby Yoda, you can safely assume that's him being like, well, on the one hand, he is breaking the rules for Baby Yoda, but he's also definitely chose being a Mandalorian over being part of that bounty hunter.
The bounty hunter.
So there's there's two things up in the air. I mean, obviously, all centering around his feelings for Baby Yoda, but like, there's obviously he's made a decision now.
Yes.
Like he and I thought they did a good job of showing you some markers of like where he's at, because obviously he's not going to monologue it, because that's not the character, and you can't see on his face what's going on.
Exactly. So they did a lot of really good visual representation with that. And that to me was really, really well done. It's just like, you can have stoic, you can have all these kind of things, and the fact that the helmet hides all the stoic facial expressions and even everything like that, you really have to look for the physicality and everything like that. The breathing noises, like what you mentioned, and even obviously that very, very obvious, like, that's not a toy kind of thing. Was a wonderful way of showing, he's growing, he's caring without seeing his face. I think one of the things that's the most interesting is that a lot of people have been giving a lot of, I've seen a lot of discussion online to be like, Mandalorians do take off their helmet and all that kind of stuff. Look at Star Wars Rebels, where Sabine, takes off her helmet regularly and everything like that. And she's a real Mandalorian and all that kind of stuff. But I think this is a rule that got established after the Purge to show their pride and to hide their numbers and their identities and all that kind of stuff. It was one of those ways of like doubling down. We have to preserve our culture, and this is part of our culture, our helmets, and
because
our armor. Like, this is it.
As you said, this is a way of life for people who I would say would be like devout to the religion. Just as you can find people who pick and choose what parts of their religions they want to adhere to. So maybe this is more like the characters you're talking about, because obviously I didn't watch the show. Obviously, I haven't watched the show, so I don't know the character, but I can see her still feeling like, I'm a Mandalorian, I don't have to follow all the rules or whatever. And just like in real life, people can think of all the different people who like adhere to certain tenets of their religion, and it doesn't mean that because they don't follow every single one that they're like, I don't associate with that religion. They just have come up with their own version of it. Right,
but what I'm saying is like, in this world, the Mandalorian, it happened after the Purge.
No, I know what you're saying. I'm saying on a broader scope, even if the rule was you can't take off your helmet, that character you're specifically citing in this instance could still take off her helmet and feel I'm a Mandalorian, because she's
Correct.
like, that's just not one of the tenets I adhere to. If you're saying there's still in story stuff
Well, it's
that
not only-
explains
yeah.
why she has her helmet off
Yeah.
and no one's saying anything, that's fine. I was just saying, like,
Yeah.
I think that
No, but it
it's-
is broadly more applied to the culture in
Yeah.
the sense where in Rebels, it's not only her. It's like, because in Rebels, they actually visit Mandalore.
Right.
And when they go, no one's wearing a helmet unless they're in combat. So it was definitely a rule that got established after the Purge
Okay.
for the remaining tribunal or whatever it was. So it's one of those things where people are like not putting that together. So it's definitely that Purge. We're definitely seeing more about it. We're understanding more. It's definitely Empire related and all that kind of stuff. Because even in the dialogue when in the forging scene with all the other Mandalorians surrounding them, we find out so much information about that. It's just like, okay, are these the only Mandalorians that are left? To hide their numbers, they come out one at a time, and like this Mandalorian, the Pedro Pascal Mandalorian is
we'll
the
call
only
him
one.
Mando because it seems to be what Carl
Yeah.
Weather calls him.
Yeah, Mando is the only one that's allowed out of that sacred place right now to hide their numbers until they can regrow and reestablish and all that kind of stuff. Absolutely fascinating way to see how these cultures driven to this extreme are still trying to keep and preserve everything and multiply and grow bigger for the future. So I think those lines of dialogue were hugely fascinating. The
Well, 'cause
signets, I think, were
yeah.
absolutely crazy.
And I
Yeah,
like that
yeah.
they were like, well, I guess it's the one that's voiced by Jon Favreau.
Yep.
Is like, you're a coward because you work with the Empire, and
Yep.
the Forge is like, there's no Empire anymore, and like,
Mm-hmm.
she basically is like, this is what it takes to be a Mandalorian. So if he's doing all those things, how could you ever call him a coward?
Right.
Which I guess works because they're all on his side at the end.
Yes.
Which is nice.
Yeah.
But I mean, even in that scene, by the end of that scene, they're all on the same side. What did they say? I can't remember what they say now. This is how it is. Or this is how it should be.
This is the way.
This is the way.
Yeah, when they
There
say
we go.
something like "this is the way,"
Yeah.
I like we really have no idea what they're actually referring to, whether or not there's a cohesive plan as to where they're going towards and all that kind of stuff. But it was a very big deal at the climax of that episode that they all actually came out and they showed the real numbers.
Yes,
Yeah.
because as you said, they were trying to hide their numbers, and they kind of showed their hand
Mm-hmm.
by coming out to say them. I didn't know if that was a function of Baby Yoda or if they just always knew they were going to come. Because there is an element of him going to Baby Yoda and like kind of looking at him.
Yeah.
I read that as him being like, "Hey, remember last time when you saved me? Like, you got anything for this?" And then the Mandalorians come in. So I can't imagine that's Baby Yoda like
Rallying.
doing a Professor X of like bringing them there, but maybe it was just kind of like him being like, "Hey, we're here.
Yeah.
If you're looking for us, we're over here."
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe
it's
not.
it's a very odd thing.
I guess we'll figure it out
this-
later
this-
or
yeah.
never.
Yeah, because this episode leaves you with more questions than it answers. It answers a lot of questions about Mandalorian culture, but it leaves a lot of questions as to where the season is going and what's actually happening here.
Well, I mean, for me, I liked this. When you talk about not the Mandalorian stuff, but just what Mando goes through, it's kind of like he leaves Baby Yoda with Werner Herzog, the client,
Yep.
and he's like, "Yeah, I don't trust this guy, but like maybe if I take another job, I won't have time to think about it." And
Right.
then he gets back into his ship and sees the thing is screwed off again, and he's like, "Yeah, I need to go back for this baby,"
Yeah.
which I was like, "Oh shit, he's gonna have to go in there and fight his way out. I'm gonna love it," and it's exactly what he does.
Yep.
Then he gets overwhelmed. I'm like, "Oh, well, this did not go as I planned it." And then when the Mandalorians save him, or that even before that, when I mean, obviously they were just gonna kill him, but when Carl Weathers is like, "Hey, if you give me the baby, maybe I'll let you go," I
Right.
was like, I mean, he even said maybe. Like this, he didn't even pretend like, "No, I'll just let you go." He was like, "Yeah, maybe."
Yeah.
I was like, "Yeah, he's gonna have to make a decision," because like up until that point, they really showed that he's like, "Well, no, these are the guild rules. I follow the guild stuff." And then he just made a choice, like, "I guess I don't follow guild rules anymore," and he started to fight them, which I liked. But I guess that means because the second time I watched it and was really paying attention, I was like, "Oh, like they're all their trackers are going off. But
Yeah.
I didn't know if those trackers were going off for him or for the baby Yoda.
It was for the baby Yoda. Because like it was like during the attack, like it was one of those things where he even during the delivery, one of the opening scenes, it was just like he was like, why were there multiple fobs on this? And then,
Yeah, but even as Werner says, you've given it to me, you've taken the commission, you've taken the money.
Mm-hmm.
This matter has been forgotten.
Mm-hmm.
So if I don't think Werner lies, I mean, he's pretty mysterious, but I think because of the expository nature of that line, I feel like that means it's over now. Those fobs are irrelevant.
They're deactivated
now.
or
something.
like
So
that.
then for me, that means someone must have put one out on him.
Possibly.
Like once it's even hinted at that he might be going back for that baby. Because
Right.
I feel like obviously Carl Weathers knows him.
Yeah.
And he probably was like, yeah, you took that, but I know you're not like acting, because he was like, they were waiting there for him.
Yes.
Like he even says like, yeah, and we knew you'd come back.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I was like, I mean, the show leaves it open ended, but I feel like that probably was for him, not for the baby, because
Most likely.
that contract was closed, and if
It was either that.
and it makes sense for them to be like, now we just don't talk about this
Yeah.
ever again.
It was either that or there was a plan to do a double cross. Like, oh, he got the bounty for this, so now we're just going to try to take the bounty from him with the Beskar steel and all that kind of stuff.
Right? Yeah. I mean, either way,
It
it
could
would
have been
be
a
like,
double cross situation, or it could
well, I
have been
mean,
whatever
because
it
he
was,
says
but
like
yeah.
when he meets with Carl Weathers, like, yeah, Mando, they all hate you because you're the one that won or whatever.
Yeah.
So I feel like that was more like, yeah, even if it's a double cross, I feel like it was a bounty on him, even though you have room to believe it could be
Right.
back for the baby, but I don't know. Maybe it's a non-issue,
Yeah.
but like,
unless the fob that he took from Carl Weathers, and it must have a two-way communication thing too. Like, oh, I can track it as well as
that would make sense.
yeah.
Like, you'd need
That's to
know,
me what
like,
it was, instead of there being a bounty out on him, because unless there was, and that's maybe why Carl was like trying to get him to do all those things, like, hey, I could give you spice, which is like an intergalactic like
Yes.
drug, not like actual spice, it's drug. And then he was like, oh, I can bring you to this spa, and alluding to like a brothel kind
Yes,
of situation
yeah.
as well. And he was just like, no, I just want the job and all that kind of stuff. So maybe there was a plan for a sneak attack or something to ambush him when his guard's down, but we'll never really know what the true
I
intent
mean,
was.
because for me, my assumption is now it's just a full-on like, we're gonna go get that guy now.
100%.
Like, he'll just
Yeah.
have to fight off the guild
Yeah. And
for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and then see what his ultimate goal with the baby Yoda is. Like, he's like, now I saved it, but now what? Now am I going to be a dad? Like, what do I do?
I would say that would be the big question is,
Yeah.
but if I feel like I've pegged the show, it feels like he won't have enough time to think about that because he'll be so busy.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, obviously that will always be there. That's how you anchor the show, is him trying to reconcile what his actual relationship with this baby Yoda is. But I feel like a lot of it will be him just trying to save it and himself while he like fights off the
Yes.
guild members that are coming for him.
Yeah.
And probably whatever is left of the Empire, because obviously the client isn't going to be happy.
Right.
They did have the one thing, because I think you were saying they're going to just pull the midichlorians out of
Yep.
Baby Yoda, and he seemed to be going like, yeah, just extract whatever you can get out of this thing and let's go.
Yeah.
So it seems like you're onto
100%.
something with
Yeah.
that as well.
Because even when the midichlor, like when the doctor,
Dr. P. I wish I remembered his last
yeah,
name.
I
but
just looked it up and I forgot. Whatever. Well,
Keep talking, I'll look it
yeah,
up.
during the delivery of that, the doctor does two scans. One is a midichlorian scan, and then the other one is just a general health scan and all that kind of stuff. So to me, I think it's a very, very clear thing that they're trying to harvest midichlorians from the baby Yoda.
Dr. Pershing.
Pershing, yeah. That's because, like, for the intent of cloning or whatever, but this could be very, very well set up for the Emperor kind of thing,
Right.
The
Yes.
return of the
Yeah.
Emperor. And this is what I was thinking, is that, okay, well, in order for, because the Emperor in episode 9, it's very, very heavily rumored that not only is he a clone, but he is also a mechanically enhanced kind of thing.
Okay.
So he's kind of like a cyborg and all that kind of stuff too, which makes sense because that tracks with Vader, it tracks with Darth Maul, it tracks with all these kind of things, and the Luke hand cut off the android component, cyborg component of Star Wars. So it tracks very, very well. The idea is, can you clone midichlorian count? And I doubt that was the major. Like, I doubt that was a thing that could have been done. So I think in order for them to be able to clone him successfully, they had to extract midichlorians from a high midichlorian count being, and then instill that into the clone, and therefore that's what comes out of it. So it could be that Snoke was maybe one of the failed clones that didn't work out too well or something like that, but still got some midichlorians in, and then Palpatine was the actual one because there was tests. I don't know, but it's just a theory on my part, but whether or not that actually gets explored through here is a different story, because the interesting thing is how the air dates are going to come out, in the sense where the finale of The Mandalorian is a week after the release of Star Wars Episode 9, so I feel like that's got to have some hint towards a connection with Episode 9, perhaps, maybe, because
we'll see.
And maybe like the Emperor's origin or return won't be fully explored there and will be fully explored in The Mandalorian.
That would be a mistake on their part, but
I believe so too.
I think it could happen.
Yeah.
We've been calling her the Forger, but her name is the Armorer.
The Armorer.
I wish it was the Forger.
The Forger sounds way better.
But just so that we don't sound like a bunch of grade A idiots, I'll just keep calling her the Armorer.
Yeah.
Okay. But
Armorer.
Come on.
Yeah.
Should have called her the Forger. Yeah. What you brought up something there. Well, I lost it. Yeah. Anyway, there was something you were saying that I thought was an interesting bit of connection to this specific chapter, but
we'll see. But either way, whether or not they were actually harvesting midichlorians from it or studying it to try to clone, like, we don't know. But what we do know is that the patch that the officer wears, or the doctor wears, is a Camino patch. It's this where, of course, they cloned the clone army in Episode 2.
Right.
Is on the planet of Camino. So they've got ties to that cloning kind of.
Yeah. I think
idea.
you're onto something for sure. Just as I said, I kind of like that this was its own thing.
Yeah.
But if they want to tie it into the show, obviously that's what their plan is for the Marvel stuff, is to tie the shows into the movies. So who's to say they're not going to do it here?
Yep.
I just think that this is a big win for them, and it would be nice if they just kept it in its own thing and not try to tie it.
Yeah,
to,
I think there has to
movies.
be some connection, though, especially with the importance of the baby Yoda and the lack of Jedi through the universe. I think that's why it has to connect.
I just feel like
I would
really
agree.
does it really?
Because the issue is, if we look at it from this perspective, then they're really limited into how much it can connect with the actual the saga, in the sense where after season 1 of The Mandalorian, they're starting to shoot season 2 now. Season 2 can really go in a totally different direction from season 1. That's my thought process, is like season 1 has to be grounded within this, and then season 2 can actually go off and venture and do everything that it wants to do. I don't know. We'll have to see how the rest of this season plays out.
Yeah, doesn't feel like a great way to do a show, but we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, and the reason
That's
why
why I'm hoping that's not connected.
Yeah.
That as directly.
Right.
Obviously, the connection is they're sharing the same universe as these things that everyone has like grown up with. It's not. It can't be completely its own thing. There's obviously going to be connections. It's just.
Yeah.
I think they should limit that, because what I want is to avoid that whole Netflix Marvel show thing where it was like the happening or whatever, and you're like, just.
Yeah.
If you don't want to be part of it, or if you're not allowed, just stop talking about it and do your own thing. Like, we can just be like, yeah, they know this is a world that has Iron Man, and kind of, you don't have to try and like connect it to actual events in that thing. Like, just do your shit
Yeah.
and then and let people enjoy
Yeah.
the expansion of the universe.
It's true because there's, and I agree with you, it shouldn't be too grounded in the original saga because this is a period of time that is very, very interesting. It's set 5 years after the fall of the Empire. There are still Empire warlords, like they say there are, like Imperial officers that still control posts, but they're warlords as opposed to actual having galactic anything. Galactic credits mean nothing now, so the economy throughout the universe is like shattered. It's trying to rebuild, and it's the New Republic is seen as a joke and all that kind of stuff. So it's this really, really interesting period of time where it's like, how do you go from one fallen kind of oppressive rule to go towards freedom again, and what does that look like? Is it chaos? And it obviously is right now, but it's just one of those very, very interesting things to explore on camera right now that's not directly related to it. It's a subplot more than anything else. And it's a very minor one. It's literally the Wild West, and that's so cool about
I enjoy
this.
that aspect
Yeah.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I guess Carl Weathers really picked his side there. I thought there was a bit where he was like, "No, I can't do this to my boy," because I feel like during the gunfight, didn't like the Mandalorian wasn't he like able to take his shot on Carl Weathers, and then he didn't
I think he
really?
pulled back.
Yeah, he was just like, "Yeah, well, I'm not. Never mind."
Yeah.
I couldn't tell the first time I watched it. I thought for sure Carl Weathers also pulled a shot, but I think he was just like, "Nah, I don't see him.
Yep.
But, like this guy behind him can see him. You try and get him."
Yeah, I think it's also reflective of the fact that Carl Weathers' character in this situation has a lot of power from an organizational standpoint, but doesn't have the actual skill set as a bounty hunter anymore.
He seems like he is smart enough to get things done though. He wasn't like the only reason he didn't he had the drop on the Mandalorian is just that he needed to be like a monologuing villain that he didn't just kill him.
Yep.
He could have just got him and
Yep.
then. So that's, more of a writing thing than I feel like the character thing. Because realistically, that character would have got him, and it would have shown that he's got the skills and the smarts over everyone else, meaning there's a reason he's at the top.
Right.
But, the only reason he lost is because the Mando did that thing where he just straight up couldn't see, and I can just assume he was using his visor to, actually seek out. Because, again, I still think he shot where he shot on purpose, because he was like, oh, he's got a piece there. This won't kill him. It'll just get him out of
the Beskar steel. That I had no idea. I was like, I couldn't tell.
Well, I just feel like that's the reason for showing that that's what was there.
Right.
Because in this universe, you could also just show him get up from it, and I feel like people would just be like, I guess so, whatever. Yeah. Like the reason of showing that in particular, I feel like, is to show, especially when you're kind of showing earlier that he wasn't going to take a kill shot on him, was him being like, all right, I need him out of here, but I'm not going to kill him. Right. And I feel like they showed a couple of times in the episode that he's got that, basically what he sees, and that he can heat seek and stuff like that. That maybe he was like, all right, if I shoot here, I'll get him. I'll get him out, but not kill him.
Right. Yeah, that to me is still, I'm still trying to decide whether or not that was done on purpose, or whether or not Weathers was actually that lucky. I'm genuinely curious about that. And
me too.
We will explore that more.
I guess I'm just assuming he did that on purpose. It seems like he doesn't kill for the most he does for killing was to get the baby back.
Yes.
He's not
and to get back at the Jawas and all that kind of stuff that tore apart his ship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But those are moments of him letting emotion take over, and I'm assuming this was him not letting his emotions take over.
Because I think
I'm fine with him letting his emotions take over, but
so am I. Because I think the Weathers plan here was listen, we will keep you alive, we'll punish you and do all those kind of things, but if we do that, then we're gonna have. Then he was thinking, I'm gonna have the most impressive bounty hunter in the parsec under my thumb at this point. Yeah. And it's so that's going to up my power by showing a little bit of mercy here. He's going to be tied to me forever.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
I think that's what the intent with Weathers was.
But I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying the other thing that I feel like might be brewing is, if I'm right about them actually putting a bounty on him, that might be a pretty high bounty that he could just collect on that. And then be like, and then I'll be, because I feel like he said that in chapter 2, where
Yeah.
he's like, I'm rich, like even I'm rich or did he
Yeah.
say that in this chapter? I don't remember now.
That
There's
I
a,
don't
there's
know.
a moment where he shows like what he made off of this, and he's like I'm rich now too. Like
Yeah.
and that might be this chapter, and I just forgot.
So do you like, and that was the biggest thing, right? In like the first chapter, he was like, "Yeah, I can't afford to pay you for this bounty, and like, so I have to give you calamari coins, which aren't worth as much as galactic credits or empire credits, what they were in the back in the day." And so with this, the fact that he has the Beskar steel on him this time around. Where do you think that came from? Like that's a very interesting revelation. Or do you think he was just being slimy and hiding it from him in the first chapter?
No, I think him bringing in the baby was like,
and there was
that
like
was a
commission?
big deal for him. That
That was a commission that
Yeah.
he got. So kind of like an agent getting 10% or something like that.
Yeah,
off an
he's
actor.
like this.
Okay.
This really worked out for me, which because I feel like that's what they're setting up is that he doesn't really have loyalty. He's just like he needs more money. Like he wants
makes
more
money,
money. Yeah. Which is it's interesting the way he's playing it. Like
Yep.
I think he's having a lot of fun. I mean, he's also one of the only main characters that you actually see the face of. So so it's like, yeah, like I can tell that this actor is having a good time. But yeah, I don't know. I feel like he likes Mando as much as Mando brings him money.
Yes.
And obviously him choosing to go back for that baby is bad for business for him. So I don't know if he would. I would like if you're right. I would be like that makes
Total sense.
narrative sense as
Yeah.
well. But I also feel like they were setting up that he's kind of like this guy's bad for business as well.
Right.
Like it's better to just get rid of him, collect on that bounty, and then move on. So we'll see. Maybe we're both off, but like
Right.
I feel like you're also right that he could be like, well, I need to keep this guy around to keep making money.
Yeah.
And I feel like also they've set up a scenario where he's like, I can't keep this guy around if he's going to make decisions like this.
Right. It's going to make me look bad. But then at the end of the day, when this whole season is done, whether or not Weathers is still around, because
Yes, exactly.
the big names that they've promoted so far, they've had no issues killing them off, which is super, super cool. Like IG-11.
Yes.
That was promoted as a big character and all that kind of stuff in the promotional materials. And then just like, no, you only have one episode and we're going to kill you off right away.
You got like one scene.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah. And then now with the MMA fighter coming in the next episode or something
Gina
like that.
Carano.
Yeah, I don't know her name, but that's gonna be super interesting to see.
I
how
keep
that
forgetting
plays out.
that's where because I legitimately only think of her as an actor. Like she was in Deadpool,
Yeah.
she was in Haywire, but
Yeah.
she is an MMA fighter.
She's like first and foremost an MMA
Yeah.
player. But it's good for her
'Cause
for
I was
making
like,
that
is
media
she
show.
the armorer? And then I looked it up. No, she is not.
No.
And also, you see her face in the promotional material.
Yeah.
And then I was like, wait, is then Ming Na the armorer? I'm like, nope, she is not either.
So she has a very, very pivotal role in this. So I can't wait to see what she actually does. Because that's when I was
Ming-Na?
reading a report, they were like, "Oh, Ming Na's role revealed in The Mandalorian" or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, that wasn't. I don't know. You clickbait writers or you're good at getting my clicks.
Yeah,
But
I have not clicked on anything for this show. I'm just enjoying watching it and
Oh yeah.
maybe sounding less informed than all the other stuff, but just being like, nah, I just want to watch this and
That's
see what
fair.
happens.
I mean, your ride is much, much more interesting that way. My ride is like, oh yeah, I saw that coming.
Yeah, because I was surprised that they hadn't shown up yet, but I guess there's only
There's like
8 episodes and they're only on chapter 3.
Yeah.
Whatever, you know what I mean. They're only on chapter 3, so yeah.
I think it's like
introducing
one
people at chapter-
major guest star per episode or so far is what I've seen.
Yeah.
One or two. I mean, with the Nick Nolte IG-11 kind of thing,
Right.
and yeah,
So the big thing, not the big thing, but a really interesting thing here is the director of this episode
Yes.
is Deborah Chow.
yep,
Historic stuff aside, which I'm not trying to be like minimize. That's a big deal. This is the first woman of color, first woman to direct, but it's also the first woman of color to do anything Star Wars related,
Yes.
like above the line, I would say, because I do believe for Episode 9 there's a woman of color who's DP or
Yes.
at least second unit assistant director. I don't know.
but not like full on directing.
No.
like not in that.
So
the
this
actual
is Deborah
director.
Chow.
Yeah,
So that is important.
Yes.
Also, the fact that she's got, I feel like the first chapter that everyone agrees is great.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any real dissent for this chapter the
No.
way I've seen for some of the other two. Like, I would say it's overall positive. But I've heard negativity for both chapters that preceded this one.
Oh, really?
Whereas this one, I feel like everyone was like, and I think it was that setup of like he's gonna go break in and then he's gonna have to fight his way out, and that's always a compelling thing to do,
Right.
and she executed it perfectly.
Yes.
But she is gonna be basically the Dave Filoni of the Obi-Wan show.
Oh, really?
So that's why.
That's really
So
cool.
that's why I thought it was really cool that she nailed this episode, because maybe that's what happened. Was they were like, "Holy shit, this was great!
Right.
You can do the Obi-Wan show." Like,
Sure.
I'm not sure she's gonna direct every single episode, but I feel like the same way this is kind of like a John Favreau written, Dave Filoni like produced show. This is gonna. That's how Deborah Chow will work on Obi-Wan.
It's very interesting to me because what it seems like the rumors now at Lucas Films and Star Wars and all that kind of stuff is that I think Kathleen Kennedy's time is going to be up because her contract expires in 2021.
Yeah.
And I think the intention now is to have Favreau and Filoni take over the future of Star Wars, which to me is like the golden thing, because Filoni is just, and nothing against Kathleen, it's just Filoni really has such a good grasp of the materials. If you watch Clone Wars, it's one of the most underrated things in the Star Wars universe, as well as Rebels. These are kids shows fundamentally, but the writing and how it sets up the lore and all that kind of stuff is absolutely breathtaking. So Filoni and Favreau at the helm doing this kind of stuff is absolutely amazing, and I think is really going to do the new wave of Star Wars movies justice, whether or not it be a Darth Bane trilogy, a Knights of the Old Republic trilogy, or what happens like immediately afterwards. I think what we're going to do, though, to space apart everything, depending on what episode happens in episode 9, how that saga gets concluded, is that they're going to start exploring the period of time in the original Sith and Jedi wars and all that kind of stuff on Korriban and all that kind of stuff. I think that's what's going to really happen. So it's going to be like Old Republic stuff is, I think, is what they're shooting for.
The only thing I would say is maybe a downside is because I think that's what happened with Zack Snyder early on with the DC is when you've got the actual filmmaker that's trying to oversee everything, that's when you get
messy.
That's when you get the reason the Kevin Feige thing works is because he's not legit. Like, he isn't writing the scripts and directing this stuff. He is helping people, so because he can have the bird's eye view and be like, all right, while you focus on your story, I can see how this fits into everything. Correct. And then he's not like legitimately in it. Whereas it seems like Dave Filoni is actually like directing and like writing, and that the writing would be his strong suit, from what I understand, for everybody. Yeah.
And Favreau would be the foggy.
So I don't know too many instances where that works as well as everyone thinks it will.
It doesn't work. I agree with you. That's why the MCU is the way it is, because the
if
best
John
way
Favreau was like, I'm never gonna like, but he's like writing Mandalorian. That's why this works.
Yes.
And so it's like his vision for this show, not his vision for the Star Wars universe.
Right.
And so if you have someone, I mean, whoever it is, but that's why someone like Kathleen Kennedy, you need that, because she's not, yes, she's very involved, but she's not writing the script, she's not directing.
Correct.
She can have the bird's eye view that I think is necessary. So that's why I'm always like,
that is my hesitation.
I'm always like, I don't know if it's like great if you get like the person who's legitimately making the stuff or the stories to be like, I'm going to oversee everything, because I mean, the big example we have is Zack Snyder, and it's like, I'm not putting a value on what he did, but like, it means that if you don't like it, you're kind of fucked. Because then it's like, well, this is the direction we're going, and there was no one with a bird's eye view to be like, well, how does this play for every single? Because now you've got one director who is directing and writing his stuff, telling other directors who want to direct and write their stuff what they should be doing, or at least being like, well, this is the tone you have to hit. And then you lose that idea of like, let's bring in people to do what they do within what we want to do. Instead, you're just being like, well, no, everything has to be like this now.
Yeah, and it's also an argument whether or not the interconnected aspect would work within Star Wars versus MCU, where it's the source material clearly is comics. Star Wars is very much traditionally, even like from a storytelling standpoint, is very linear in regards to everything that it goes through. Like if you look at the expanded universe stuff, yes, there is crossover, but that's very, very simple stuff. So for example, in the original saga, the original trilogy, we have Wedge Antilles, who's the X-wing fighter at both Death Star things, and has a big fan following. Now he overlaps with the main saga, but he has got a journey of his own, like a Rogue Squadron kind of thing, where it's like all X-wing fighter pilots and what they go through and all that kind of stuff. So it overlaps very, very minimalistically. It's not integral to the overlap. Not like, for example, what happens in Thor Ragnarok directly will affect everything that happens in Endgame or Infinity War for Thor's arc. So it's a very arguable thing whether or not Star Wars needs to be interconnected, because
that's what I'm saying. Like if you obviously are looking to interconnect, if you're being like, we're shifting to like maybe John Favreau is the new Kathleen Kennedy, but like it's like
I don't know if that's obvious though. I just think that's just like, okay, in terms of development, these are the things that we're going to push out, and it's oversight,
right?
But
not
he
exactly
isn't.
He isn't a producer first and foremost. He's a storyteller.
Yes,
he's a filmmaker.
Yep.
Meaning you're looking at him to set the tone for your stuff.
Yep.
Instead of what that sort of somewhat intangible aspect of, and I'm not saying Kevin Feige because he's the only one who can do it, but having a role like that, where there is someone who is a step removed, he can let and yes, he is still a storyteller because obviously he's got this plan, but he has people that can execute the certain elements of that, and that's what they can focus on, which I don't know that works with Jon Favreau unless he's just switching his career. Right. The reason I'm happy with someone like Kathleen Kennedy is because she's not trying to like actually direct the stuff or write it. Yeah. She can guide people, but she's like, this is kind of where we're going. She hasn't had a great track record with it, but how do we harness what you're doing to get that done here? Right. And so that's why I'm not that excited to hear like, oh, Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau might take over the scope of Star Wars.
That's an interesting point you brought out. It's definitely one I haven't considered. It was just one that from Filioni's track record as a showrunner for Rebels as well as Clone Wars, it just, and I haven't seen Resistance yet, so I can't really speak to that. It's the idea of him just understanding the source material so well and being able to tie together so many different aspects of the saga.
Well, if you want to give him a trilogy, whatever, like I just feel like that's where you should start, and then if he makes the decision that that's not what he wants to do anymore, I don't know that he has. Right. It's two different functions if you're actually creating the stuff and as opposed to maintaining and developing the overall universe. I agree. It
would be like a city planner working with architects, in the sense where the city planner would be like, okay, this goes here, this goes here, this goes here, but it's up to the architect to actually design the building and all that kind of stuff, right? That's how I see it. Foxy's role is just like, he's responsible for designing the whole thing. He's an architect himself, but he's leaving the nitty-gritty detail work to the people that it suits best for the project, and that is a better way of looking at it. Versus someone like Snyder, for example, has just, when he's involved, he's totally like, I will give credit for Snyder in the amount of detail he puts into a lot of things. Like there's like screen grabs that I was like, oh, this is a reference to this, and like this, it's super cool and it's super nerd like. I get that, but you're too hands on in the middle of it all to actually be able to step back and be like, oh, this is how it actually fits in. This is a huge story element that we're missing now because I focus so much on giving a throwback to this or this color means this or whatever.
I mean, that's more specific to him. I don't think he's the best storyteller. I think he's great at
not
adapting.
Yes.
He's, but I guess that's the idea, is that you gave someone who knows how to pay homage really well.
Yes.
Reins to the whole story that you wanted to tell. Right. So then you're kind of locked into that, meaning that when you bring in David Ayer to do Suicide Squad, it's like how much can he actually do to like do what people like about David Ayer? and how much can Patty Jenkins do what she likes about, or what people like about Patty Jenkins,
Right.
and so on. That was more what I meant. It's that, like, yes, you can speak to specifically what went wrong with Zack Snyder, but more so it's he has a vision for how he likes to specifically make a movie and like what components he thinks are good, and then he gets to dictate that to everyone, instead of someone who is like, hey, where do we want to be, where do we want to go, and then what are all the different pieces and different flavors that we put together to make that happen.
Because you're like, Snyder overseeing the whole connected DC universe was basically micromanagement. It's the best example of micromanagement, I think.
Well, I mean, people really like Aquaman and Wonder Woman, and he, by all accounts, had his hand in those two things.
He did.
But I think they also came out at specific times where
Yes.
Warner Brothers were done with him, so
Correct.
he didn't have that much say.
He probably had a lot to say.
I mean, he
whether
cast
or not,
the people, like he cast those two actors, and so that's a big deal as well. But anyway, let's get back to The Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Great episode.
Super strong episode. Love it. More questions than it answers, but that's okay. It's episode 3. It is the mid-beat of this.
It is chapter 3.
It's chapter 3. And is mid-beat. So it's definitely something there. And we're going to find some more answers out in the next episodes or so. But my biggest question right now is, has the Mandalorian collective, I'm going to call them, or tribe or whatever it was, are they out now? Have they shown their numbers? Are they fully public? Do they go back in hiding?
Question.
That, to me, is the next question that needs to be answered.
Can't put the genie back in the bottle.
Nope, can't do it.
Or maybe they can. Maybe the show won't really worry about that.
Yeah.
I don't know. And it's hard to say.
Yeah, and to be, and one of the biggest elements of Star Wars lore that I really want to come back in this is the Darksaber.
All right.
Yeah. So for those of you that haven't seen Rebels or the Clone Wars,
So me.
the Darksaber is a lightsaber that was specifically held and crafted by, I think, the first Mandalorian Jedi.
Okay.
And it's said in Mandalorian culture, whoever wields the Darksaber is like that. They're the one that's in control, and the only way to get the Darksaber is to have a physical combat and win in combat against the person wielding the Darksaber. So it's very, very Sith-like to gain control of the Mandalorians and all that kind of stuff. I would love to see the Darksaber come back. It's this lightsaber that's this really cool katana-style thing. The shape of it's completely different, but the blade is like black with like space kind of flex stars in it or something like that. It's one of the coolest elements of Star Wars lore out there. So I really hope it comes back, because when you watch Star Wars Rebels and when you watch Clone Wars, there's a huge amount of lore that gets written up about this. And now knowing that Filoni's involved in this, I'm really hoping it comes back, because you never really understand what actually happens to the Darksaber, especially after the events of the Purge or something like that. So is the Mandalorian collective now, is their intent and purpose to strengthen their numbers, but also to find the Darksaber at some point, and so that whoever leads it, hopefully Mando, most likely Mando, I would say, because of the fact that he's the main protagonist about this all, if he wields it and becomes the ultimate Mandalorian, and his vision is, put towards the rest of the thing, what that is going to look like, and will it be the rise of the Mandalorians again? That, I think, would be the coolest thing to look at. That's what I'm hoping for, is connection to the Star Wars Rebels and Clone Wars universe.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, that's this episode of Spoiled Rotten in the can.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for listening. Please go to thatshelf.com if you want to listen to other great podcasts, such as Bad Gay Movies, Black Hole Films, Composers.
Yep.
They're still doing things. Those are good episodes. There's other great shows.
Yeah.
Just you'll have to go to that shelf and learn about it all. It's great. And if you want to listen to episodes past episode 60, I think that's the first one that we have on that shelf for Spoiled Rotten, please go to tdfeverything.com/Spoiled Rotten.
Yeah, and one big thing that I know you're most likely not going to bring up is that Daniel wrote a feature-length film, and they're trying to get it funded right now. It's really, really cool. Deathmatch Dad with Ian Rayburn, who is one of the cameramen of my TV show Highway to Health. So definitely the collaborative work on that so far has been amazing. Can't wait to see it. So if you guys are looking to fund some really good independent works, artistic works, definitely check out their Indiegogo campaign for Deathmatch Dad.
I will put the link in the description of this episode.
Super cool concept. Can't wait to actually see it. It's gonna be great.
Thank you very much for bringing that up. And you have anything else to say?
No, that's it.
All right, please.
See you next week.
Please go on to Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Play, wherever you listen to podcasts. Rate and review this podcast because it makes us feel good about what we do.
Yeah.
And it'll make you feel good to make us feel good. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Cheers.
This has been a TDF Everything production, brah.